live button, guys. So I'll do my quick intro. And good afternoon, or should I say good evening, Frankston. We're at a slightly later time of a 6 o'clock discussion tonight. That's so that we could have two special guests join us. One is Brad Wakeling, who's from the Frankston Tiger Sharks Football Club. And the other one is Andrew Schneider, who represents, you're the president, I think, of Frankston YCW. Tonight we're talking community sport and the importance of it to Frankston, or the city of Frankston. But I'm also pleased to say that we're also joined this evening by Shane Osborne, who is a new candidate for, well, he's not new, he's been in the campaign a little while, but he's a candidate for North East Ward. And we thought we'd give him a quick opportunity just to say hello and a couple of minutes to just talk about what he's doing. And then I'll get Brad and Andrew just to make a few comments about their role in their clubs, and then we'll get into what will hopefully be an interesting and full discussion around the importance of community sport. Shane.
Yes, thank you for having me. Long-time listener, first-time caller kind of deal. No, it's been actually really good. I've watched it pretty much all the time. So I'm running for the North East Ward for years and years and years. It just feels like it's been neglected a bit in terms of all the talk about the CBD, waterfront, and all that stuff. So it's pretty much a chance to make a difference in that respect, to just level it out a bit. So the thing is, there's a whole bunch of new candidates coming in, new ideas and all that stuff. So, me from Langwarrin, we've also got a couple of guys from Carrum Downs as well, that pretty much want to just get in there, make a difference, and then restore a bit of pride into the suburbs. So the thing is, in terms of how it looks, the facilities that we've got, all that kind of stuff. And then that's a flow on. And then it's just to create jobs as well. So the thing is, post-COVID, we can create more jobs by just getting rid of the council red tape and stuff that I feel that it's just suffocating. So I used to have a small business that kind of got suffocated by that. So hopefully if I can get in, make some changes, reforms, or even suggest some different ideas, well, then we'll be better for it, Cool.
Thanks very much, Shane, and
no worries.
And best of luck with the campaign.
It's been good so far.
Yeah, good. I know from talking to people in Langwarrin, and a lot of people probably don't realise that South Ward includes a big chunk of Langwarrin as well, and Langwarrin South.
It's pretty much cut in half. So along North Road and
and I know from talking to people there that a lot of them feel that they're forgotten. As well, because all the conversation centres around Frankston CBD. But tonight we're talking about the whole of Frankston City, and we're talking about the importance of community sport. Brad, if you'd like to just quickly introduce yourself, and then Andrew will come to you.
Thanks, Stephen. So my name is Brad Wakeling. I am the Vice President of the Frankston Tiger Sharks Super Rules Club. So we're the over 35s that are still delusional enough to think that we can still run around like we used to playing footy. This is actually our 20th year, and we are 4 teams strong. So we have a group of guys 35 years and above. We have 62-year-olds as our eldest playing member. I've got 130 guys that are registered to the club. We're based out of Skybus Stadium. We're really, really fortunate to be on that ground. And I think for us, it's really about cementing post-COVID the role that sport and connection from a mental well-being perspective has. We've certainly noticed in our group of guys that are unfortunately at the tip of the pyramid when it comes to mental health and well-being challenges, suicide, anxiety, depression, drug and alcohol use. Our membership is in that demographic, and we've noticed that the reduction in being able to play sport and stay connected has really been a big challenge. So we're looking forward to getting back on a Skybus with the new lights and the new facilities, and making sure that the whole Frankston community, like we're a feeder club for YCW and Seaford and Pines and Langwarrin and Coringal. We've got past players that are all part of our club. And so we're looking at getting back on board and kickstarting the COVID recovery.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Brad. And I know from talking to you last week that you guys are doing some really interesting work about keeping your members connected as well. Andrew, you're with you're president of Frankston YCW. Tell us a bit about what you do there and how your club works.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, so as Stephen said, my name's Andrew Schneider. I'm the president of Frankston YCW Footy Netball Club. Just listening to Brad speak, I actually went to primary school with Brad, and I'm surprised he didn't mention he's also a 2003 premiership player with Frankston YCW Footy Netball Club. Brad, you forgot to mention that.
Yeah, we don't have all day.
I
I was gonna say we're the reigning premiers, the 2019 reigning premiers of the AFL Masters, but I thought that was a bit gratuitous as well. So
probably, but we're based out at Jubilee Park. We share our facilities with Frankston Peninsula Cricket. We also have a really strong juniors program with women's footy and girls footy. Girls footy is happening. Women's footy hopefully on the horizon as well. And really pleased to hear that we're looking at a redevelopment of Kevin Colopy Pavilion in the next however long, 12, 18 months, which will bring our facility in line with the AFL's goals to increase participation in junior sport, particularly in girls sport. And I'm also a school teacher as well, and I work in Frankston North area, and really, the old saying, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. And for the first little bit, I coped pretty well without football and netball, and my wife plays netball and my kids play junior sport. I coped pretty well with it because for me it was like a bit of a circuit breaker for all of the work that we do anyway. But as it's drawn on, the impact that it's had has just been phenomenal. And no one really knew what it was going to be like. And, we welcomed our kids back yesterday. And I just remember talking to staff saying, we don't know how kids are going to come back. And, there's some research done about, astronauts coming back down from space and, them having to reintegrate back into society. Same with people who go and, explore Antarctica, or, if you're a scuba diver, you come back up and you've got to get that equilibrium and balance right. It's exactly the way our staff and our students are at the moment. And all of those young people that are missing out on their community sport, it's massive. And we don't really know the impact because we've never seen anything like it before. And that's probably something that I'm really passionate about. Even last week, a mate of mine who played football VFL level took his life. And and I know that the Tiger Sharks have been impacted as well with that sort of thing. 6 Australians every day take their life, and it's community sports a religion for some people, and to take that away as abruptly as we have, there's a lot of work to be done to get it back up and running. And, and I call on all of you guys that, who are going to be making those decisions, hopefully in the future, to get it up and running again.
Great. Thanks very much, Andrew. Look, I think there's a couple of parts to this that I'd like to explore before I open up to the candidates. One is around the kind of support that the council should be providing, both in terms of facilities, but also I'm president of my kids' basketball club. I know that there are some clubs that are actually probably not going to come through the other end of this. Fortunately, the club that I'm involved in will. It makes me think that, yes, there are some grants that are available, both through council, but also through Department of Sport, and so there's some federal grants available and those kinds of things. But a lot of the smaller clubs don't even have an ABN, let alone have any kind of formal structure other than a kind of informal status. And they're the ones that aren't really able to get up and running. So I just want to kind of throw it to the candidates around, what do you think we should be doing around helping to look after the clubs, the small clubs that don't have access to those kinds of resources? And is there a way in which they can plug in as well with the clubs that are actually going to do all right and will recover quite quickly? Is this a time where we need to start getting the different sporting codes, sporting clubs coming together a bit in order to help each other out? Justin, you had your hand up first.
Well, I actually had a question as opposed to a statement, if that's okay. And this is to both Brad and Andrew. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what council can do to better to support our clubs. And I've left that very broad on purpose because obviously we're talking about two very different clubs. Obviously sort of filling the same sort of gap in terms of your mental well-being and your inclusion and your community and whatnot. But how could we, if all of the people in this room today were elected as your councillors, how could we support you and what can we do at a council level to facilitate everything for you?
Go for it, Andy.
Not all at once, please, but just one at a time.
Yeah, no, it's a really great question, and I'm sort of going to tread the line here because my role in the Department of Education and my role in community sport, I've got to,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the footy club here, and we
You can leave it broader if you want. Sorry to interrupt, Andrew. If it helps, you can leave it as a generalisation, so then you don't sort of get yourself into any sort of trouble. Yeah, happy to do that. In principle, sort of thing, if that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, look, I'll play a straight bat. We've gone down the path of having back and forward conversations with the council about our facility upgrade. It's been fantastic, and Sean LaFontaine and Jason McMillan, who's the junior president, done a mountain of work in that space. But I feel like that they've forged a really strong relationship with some of the councillors there and the people that they're dealing with, that it became a really easy conversation. And until those relationships are built, those conversations don't flow as easily. So I guess my advice, or what I'm sort of hoping, is to have counsellors that are accessible to people and that are responsive and and timely, and they get into it. And we Frankston YCW only have the club rooms for 6 months of the year, and then we hand it over to cricket. So there's certain things that we've got to get moving really quickly so we don't lose traction. But we've got a really strong relationship with the council, and it can only be stronger if we continue to keep those communication lines open.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect to appreciate, that we're tenants for periods of time, but a lot of the time it's a 12-month of the year proposition. So while we're not playing footy, we're actively seeking facilities to train during pre-season and things like that. But I suppose from our perspective, we see ourselves as a bit of a men's shed with footy boots, in as much as that we're a connector with the population that tends to drift off after the 28 to 30-year-olds go off and stop playing local footy, or work gets in the way. We bring a lot of people back to footy, and lots of families come back, and guys get to play in front of their kids for the first time and have their kids run water for them, or their wives actually come down and see them and enjoy connecting with other circles of friends. And so what I suppose our big message here is to the council is to say, we're really fortunate enough to be located at Frankston Park or Skybus Stadium, and the lights and the upgrades to the facilities are going to be kind of state of the art. And the one thing that I would encourage everyone on the council to appreciate is that this is not just a Frankston VFL Dolphins or a Frankston Tiger Sharks thing. We want to be part of the broader community and say, how lucky are we to actually have this facility in the middle of Frankston? And I think everyone's talked about their different wards, but we want to be part of curtain raisers where Frankston, YCW and Langwarrin play and under lights, or we want to be part of a curtain raiser that, or after an AFLW or an AFL preseason happens. But I suppose we want to be seen as an equal partner, because we have so much to give to the council, and we're not just a tenant that pays our $3,000 a rent a year, or we're just there to pick up rubbish after we finish on the Sunday and hope we don't make a mess. So we're looking at saying to the council, hey, look at what we can provide, not only to the community, but also to the Frankston Dolphins, which is a really important part of our vision. It's tied to our identity as Frankston people. Frankston Dolphins VFL has been around for a long time, and we're a really important sponsor for them as well. So we want to make sure that they can kick on and survive beyond 2020. So that's probably the message for us, is to see us as partners and contributors rather than just someone that kind of needs to be moved around and shuffled and found grounds for.
Great, thanks very much, Brad. I'm going to come to Shane, but Shane, once you've commented, I might actually come to Brad just to pick up on that Dolphins piece, because the Dolphins, in many respects, are the gorilla in the room. That's the club that everyone associates with Frankston, but there is so much more to it than that. And so I'd be keen to get your perspective as well, Brad. Shane.
Just quickly, just to address it to Brad, with the new lights and that have gone in and stuff, is there any indication from the council? Because what I've heard, they can only turn them on 11 times a year. And does that include, like, are you able to use it for training? Because I know that there's a couple of boys that play for the Tiger Sharks. It's availability of training. So the thing is, you'll be able to use the lights, but you're going to only be using the lower set, or have you got any guidelines from the council about what that will look like?
Not at this point. It's a bit too new. I think the last light tower only went up last week or something like that.
Yeah.
So
but with the first lot. Yeah.
I do have some information on that.
Oh, cool.
I had a conversation. Actually, Brad, maybe you can comment, but I spoke to Adrian Lloyd yesterday about the light situation, and it depends on the lux, whatever that means. If you're a spark, you can go, the amount of lights.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, Shane.
I'm here now.
Well, I think at 1,000 lux, that means you can play a night game and have TV. It can be a TV game. At 500, that'd be enough, and that can be at any time. Yeah. So I think it's up to 6 games at 1,000 lux, which will light up Dramana as well. I think.
That's exactly right. For the limitations on the 1,000 lux, not the lower setting.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Right.
Brad Hill, you've been on the committee at the Dolphins.
Yep.
Yep. So from that perspective, how do you what was the thinking in the room around the role of the Dolphins in terms of supporting smaller clubs and different codes and so on?
The Frankston Football Club, the Dolphins, and there is another Dolphins club at
Overport Park.
That's right. You were the original ones. The view of the club, or at least the culture or the attitude or the outlook or whatever you want to call it, is that we're a VFL club. So we saw ourselves as the next tier up, but we would be playing AFL listed players on the other team. So we looked at ourselves as more of a draw card for Frankston as a whole. We saw ourselves as having a slightly different story to the council, in that we were capable of drawing people to a game from all over Melbourne, rather than just a local area, which the local league is. Our other role that we saw too was to provide an avenue for local players from those local clubs if they wanted to have a crack at the next layer up. Right. So there was a path, if you like, for those players if they wanted to get noticed, perhaps end up in an AFL draft. There was a local VFL team that they could head to and see how they go. And there is now a number of ex-Frankston VFL players who have ended up in the AFL and are still in the AFL. Right, so that's, there was a common comment that I would have from a lot of other people around Frankston. How come, Skybus Stadium has all this extra money put into it, the rooms, the grandstand, the function room, now the lights, there's other clubs as well. And yeah, that's true. But, the Dolphins, have that extra angle of being a draw card, of attracting those AFL players. We've had over the years, Ben Cousins, Brendan Favola, others, whatever you reckon of them, Magic Door, have ended up coming to Frankston for a game. You can see top names without having to head up to Etihad or whatever it is called now. Marvel, MCG.
Marvel.
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, so that's the story of the Dolphins. Avenue for locals to advance. A great day out, obviously, for the average man and AFL listed players.
Right, thanks very much, Brad. Peter, I think you had your hand next, and then we'll come to you, sir.
Yeah, I did. I just had to try and decide, you know, which comment to make. But at this stage, I think, I mean, you can. I did my little graphic this afternoon. I got the membership card, put it up there. I'm not sure if it looks back the front to me. I'm not sure if you can read it or not. But I think it's magnificent to have an iconic sort of a club in Frankston. And I think the idea of money being poured into it, yeah, as Brad's saying, that's happened. But I think the idea is that will sort of, you know, if you start to become known as a sporting city, then it will help basically draw attention to other clubs as well, which do need attention as well. The other thing too with councillors and the new councillors, like I've listened to what Andrew was saying, and I think it's great that there's currently a good relationship. That is a good thing. I mean, there's a few sporting people amongst us, or we were, you know, and some of us are a bit old, 35 now. Jeez, you last a game, we last 5 minutes, if that. That's another secondary question later on about injuries. Yeah, but we remember, and what we really like is the social thing of being involved in sport. And Brad, I have to say, Brad number one with the black shirt. I'm sorry, you're relegated to Brad two today, Brad. But as Brad number one was saying before, the idea of this sporting club and other sporting clubs, they're much more than the players. There's all the other people. There's the families. There's the friends. There's the friends of players, etc. And I'll throw back if you like. I know Andrew was talking about the people coming down from space and, you know, being reacclimatized, reinculturated with society, you know, how to act. Yeah, this is going to be interesting for kids, and they will sort of they've lost a bit of connection. So they're going to have to reconnect with their peers and their friends. And the idea that we need this, and we've sort of really missed it through these times. I sort of throw back to my science background and just mention that, of course, we, Homo sapiens, sort of actually, we were better at sort of gathering together and communicating, and that's why we actually survived. And we really need that contact, and we need to communicate, contact. It's about community. Prehistoric times, they call them tribes. Now we say community. It's a nicer word, but it's really important. But I think if you look around, I think anybody here today, any would-be councillor here today, is it's going to be as strong, if not stronger. And that's what I would hope, an even stronger relationship. We're always talked about connecting with community, and I believe in that. So I think the future from that point of view is pretty bright.
Great, thanks very much, Peter. Sue.
Yes, really great conversations around the codes of football that you're very familiar with. I had a quick look on the Frankston City website this afternoon at just the number of types of sport as well that are available to the community, and it's a terrific range. Homing pigeons and roller derby leapt out at me, and I'm not quite sure you guys could share your facilities with either of those two sports, but I think maximising use of the community facilities we've got is really important. And I did chat to a lady, and I think it was the community centre or the community rooms at the Pat Roller Reserve, and she was saying that sometimes things aren't open beyond 9 to 5 or at weekends, which got me thinking, hang on a minute, we've got these facilities. If we're going to invest some money in improving the toilets, the change rooms, the club room style facilities, maybe a kitchenette, then it would be really great to think about maximising the use of spaces for different sports, for activities by different sports. I mean, you might have your fundraising nights, you might have social events, members of the club might have a birthday celebration. So there's lots of different ways that sporting groups can come together to use facilities and also build on the sort of fundamental reason for them getting together, which is a passion and a love for their sport. And I know, having made many cricket teas, that there are many ways of getting involved in a club and really enjoying it. And coming through COVID or living with COVID, I think we're going to need to find lots of ways to involve all sorts of people with a whole range of different skill sets and interests to be social and feel comfortable coming back together in spaces and contributing. Outdoors seems to be getting a plug for being the safer way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved with basketball for a much longer period of time than I have any of the other codes, so being indoors different. But again, the indoor sports, sharing spaces is really important as well. And I think being a council, if council has a role in being able to facilitate maximising the use of a facility, ensuring it's set up properly to support teams, men, women, youngsters, older players, then that, I don't know, seems a way that council can get involved.
Thanks very much, sir. And I suppose that's a good way to pick up on, because I know from talking to you, Brad 1, not Brad 2, from you talking to you, Brad 1, and I'd be interested to hear your view on this as well, Andrew, is around this shift that occurred where football teams and netball clubs started coming together, and the relatively recent emphasis on giving women's sport the same level of stature as men's sport. What has it meant for your clubs, and what sort of support have you seen coming from council or not? And what would you like to see done differently?
I am no longer the president of the club or on the committee. I remain a member, so I can't speak on behalf of the club, obviously. But certainly, the landscape in 2020 is very, very different than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. And, football clubs, and I guess sporting clubs in general, in my view, have always had a role and have performed it very well of binding the community together, right? Peter mentioned it before. You head down to the club, you meet your neighbours, you meet the locals, you have a good time, you watch the game, what have you, and to include women's sport, to include netball, etc., ticks the boxes in that respect. It's as much about community as it is for football, and it also ticks the boxes for the council, your landlord as well. They're maintaining the ground, the facilities for you. The more use that's out of that as their costs rise, the better for everybody.
Go for it, Andy.
From our point of view, our netballers, we became Frankston YSW Footy Netball Club 10 years ago next year. So it's a 10-year celebration of that. And I can tell you that the last few years, we haven't had a better gala ball, Thursday night meals, Saturday post-game awards, other functions and events. The inclusion of the netball code or sport has just been unbelievable, and it's what country footy clubs have been doing forever. But finally, Metro Melbourne have caught up and gone, well, actually, this works. And we found that girlfriends of players, brothers and sisters of players, it is just. I can't speak highly enough of the impact that netball has had on our footy club. Matt, Brad, are we thinking, although Katie, my wife was still playing at 40, should there be an over 35s Tiger Sharks netball, Brad?
Yeah, well, and that's the legitimate question. We're tossing up between, do we go down the AFL women's path, or do we try to expand to a netball competition? Because the diversity of thought and ideas that, like Andy's talking about, like I think back to when we first came up 25 years ago, playing in an environment where the functions were just about putting a cow on the oval and selling raffle tickets as to where it's gonna do its business. Like that's something that you think only blokes would think about that. And is it any wonder? Why it was just a bloke's world? And so the opportunity to have them more involved and more connected, it just there just doesn't seem like another option to not include them in every aspect of the organisation and the playing of the sport. And I think the more we can get the girls involved from a young age. I've got a 19-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old daughter, and we can't push them fast enough into sport and the access that they've got in the Frankston region, whether it's Jubilee Park from a netball perspective, that's going to be state of the art pretty soon. The junior footy competitions have got AFLW girls coming out of it in rapid numbers. We're really blessed with that. And I think the more we can associate pathways for people, not just, and to Brad's point, I get that VFL was a real pathway to AFL, but at the end of the day, what we're looking for is council to support pathways for people of all skills and at all ages. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about being part of the Super Rules competition. We're talking about a competition that has 37 clubs in Metro Melbourne. We've got 35 to over 55s in teams. And at a national carnival level, you can actually go and represent Victoria, the Big V, as a 35-year-old, a 45-year-old, a 50-year-old, and a 60-year-old. And now, in the last few years, they've actually got a Victorian women's game as well up at the carnival. So it's really empowering to see that there's pathways. And I suppose from a council perspective, what we'd be looking for is opportunities for that to make it happen rather than barriers as to why it can't. So I would rather hear less about the traffic, the volume of foot traffic on an oval, as opposed to we can work out the grass, but we need to invest in the facilities to make sure it's gender inclusive. That's the important thing for us, so that there's less barriers, because there's enough open space and there's enough, and particularly from a Skybus perspective, we're looking at saying this is a centerpiece. We've, as footballers in Frankston, we've been lucky enough to play at a higher level using that facility. We've had grand finals and great memories on that oval. Wouldn't it be great to have your daughter be able to run out there as well? Yeah. Or wouldn't it be great to have your daughter go out and play at Jubilee Park on the netball courts, where the Vixens have gone and done some pre-season training, because it's that high class that they can see the pros come down and play around. So I think that's the moral of the story here, that there's no reason why we shouldn't be catering for both genders.
Yeah. I think it's a point really well made, and if we think beyond just the bigger facilities that have been either redeveloped or are going to be developed, whether that be sort of Jubilee Park or whether it be the new proposed reserve out in Langwarrin or the Dolphins ground or Frankston Park. I'm thinking also about all those smaller facilities that are dotted around Frankston City. I might come to you in a minute, Shane. Yep. My daughter played with Southern Districts Rugby Union Club for a couple of years, and that was that's a facility that's in dire need of refurbishment, and there is no way you can have sort of equal gender access to changing facilities and so on. And yet the club itself was wanting to get more girls teams, more women's teams up and running. Shane, let's talk about places that aren't Frankston City.
Aren't Frankston City?
The places that are, in your ward.
Oh, I suppose I could touch on. I wouldn't mind starting on Frankston Rovers. So that's a small little club that I'm still involved because my young boy plays. So I'm assistant coach and a junior vice president of that club itself, and that's a small club that is in dire need of the upgrade for our pavilion, and as well as our lights. So every year we have a Legends game, and so all the old boys come out and have a game. We have the big fireworks and all that stuff. So it's quite a good little club to be involved in. We don't have multiple teams across multiple age groups, but it's just a junior footy club. So occasionally we get the St Kilda players coming down. We're still working on Dermy. He's an ex-player. And our feeder into the old age group is Frankston Bombers. So I was going to touch on the fact that even with Frankston Bombers, they've only got one netball court down at Baxter Park, which it needs to be expanded. So, and that's the other thing that I'll probably touch on further down the track, but more in our ward as well. So you got Carrum Downs, whole heap of clubs. Like Carrum Downs is quite a big club. My young boy played Auskick there, and that's how he got into football. And then when we moved, he just followed his friends, and now he'll end up probably playing at Langy, or he'll probably stay at Frankston Rovers. We'll see how we go. But it's a really good thing to be involved in the any sport to any degree. So I'm still trying to work on my daughter to start the netball journey. So that'd be good, but that's driven by the friends. So the thing is, if we can get it, with the schools and stuff like that. So if the council can, facilitate all that kind of stuff, and just get rid of the barriers, I think, as well. So we don't have a great deal, and I've spoken to members of our club as well as the other boys. It's not too much that the council can't do in terms of, they can be helpful in terms of facilitating even for pre-season. So if we've got pre-season and they haven't released the ground to us yet, we can go and use another school's ground. Do you know what I mean? Just to get our pre-season up and running, because the Heather Hill Cricket Club that shares our ground at Bruce Park are still using it. So the thing is, we can get all our teams up and running for the season. So it is good, but like I said, it's just about creating the relationship. So at least Brad and Andrew and that can come to us if they've got dramas, if they've got any ideas, initiatives, anything that can help pushing the whole system together. So if it's the netball club, if it's any of the fringe sports, anything like that, we can be accessible to a point where if they're getting any drama, then it's a sounding board. And at least if we've got the drive to be united in terms of we want to progress this, then a lot of the decisions are easy, because the core premise is we want to expand it. It's not just no, it's everything's too hard. We can just go, you know what, I'm open to it. And the thing is, if that gets around, that we're quite open to any ideas that will get us going forward, even, and not so much with sport as well, it's like with jobs or with projects or anything like that. Instead of just having a knee-jerk no, having let's just put it on the table. Sweet. You know what I mean? And then that way, that to say, if Andrew has got a drama or anything like that, he can call one of us. He can call the council. We can, and just sound us and go, what do you think about this? Oh, it's a great idea, because it fits into where we want it to be. You know what I mean? As in to progress, get better, and progressively we'll get better facilities. So the council itself has got a plan that will upgrade eventually Bruce Park and the lights and YCW and all that stuff. And then the next round is the upgrades and stuff like that. Like this is getting a bit broken. So so I think they've got a good system already. It's just a case of we'll just keep an eye on it, and then if there's anything that comes up, so just say, like I said, if Brad's go, oh well, I've got an idea for this, let's roll. So, or if that needs improving, or like you said, the extra toilets or any facilities and stuff like that, we're certainly open to. So cool.
All right, thanks very much, Shane. There's a point you made in there. Sorry, I was just going to pass to you actually, Sue. But there was a point you made there around persuading girls to stick with sport as well. We want boys to stick with sport as well. But I've certainly noticed that my daughter's quite big into her sport, does lots of swimming, does netball, stuff like that. But none of her peers are involved in organised sport anymore. They've kind of hit that age well, they all start to come off. And I don't know, Andrew, if you want to throw in your perspective, but around, how does that look from an educator's view? But Sue, if I could perhaps offer the floor to you.
Yeah, just to one point and a question actually, which probably relates to yours, Stephen. I was just reminding myself of 3 of the projects in the Northwest Ward that were tabled by council at the start of this year. And some money has sort of been put aside, but with the Pat Rollo Pavilion, for example, the issue there is they've got portable change rooms that are being hired because the pavilion doesn't actually have duplicate change rooms. So, that's immediately a shortfall on this male-female changing room arrangements. Same with the Monterey Pavilion. There's a toilet upgrade going ahead, but again, it's about having ladies change room facilities for visiting teams, umpires, female participants. So, having facilities that are far more acceptable to everybody who wants to play. And the same with the Belvedere Bowls Clubhouse. That was the other one that was discussed as well, that, encouraging more female participation when you've got the facilities available for women to come and join in. So that was just me sort of reminding myself that these things are being spoken about, but we really need to tip them over into some action. But my question was really around whose responsibility or where does the communication sit to generate more membership to clubs? Is it with the club? Does council have a role? Is it just how do we get more participation across all sports? Yeah, just a thought, just a question.
To me?
Well, anybody who.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. I thought someone else was going to have a go. No, in terms of the participation aspect, it should be more. Well, to say it's more on the clubs to keep the momentum going from the year to the year. So I've noticed even with the under 9s, under 10s and 11s, because I'm the assistant coach there, is keeping the momentum going. And what's happened now that we've had this year off, and I know that Andrew, you would see this, and Brad as well, is the momentum is stopped. So the thing is, a lot of the clubs will just needs kind of a kickstart. So if it means that if council can do a drive or or something like that to assist the clubs, but obviously it's to get the clubs, advertising, getting them back in, and then it creates the community inside the club that keeps you there, because you've got a set of friends for your school and a set of friends in the club, and they help each other. Like to this day, I'm still got memories of my junior footy coach, because I didn't want to disappoint him. It was, you know what I mean? Like he was like the yardstick in terms of how to, so there's a lot of benefit in being in the sport, but you've got to promote that. So we promote that in our club, is that, it's a team, it's a family, and then it helps you outside of football, socially, out and about. So it's just a case of just creating that community. But if that means that if the council can even jumpstart this whole situation again to try and get all the other clubs to get more players, because I know that the drop off hasn't been seen yet. It hasn't been seen yet. You know what I mean? So, and that's the other thing that we're kind of worried about what our retention rate will be across all the age groups, and not so much the junior footy club, like the older guys as well, because even with AFL is because just say if you went to an AFL game, just say for example, every Saturday and all this stuff, and it was just what you did, and then to have it all taken away, and then you all of a sudden you find that you want to do another sport, or you want to do another pastime of something, but we've lost you to it. So that's the other thing that AFL will see, and it'll flow all the way down to fringe
and I think
clubs,
and I think that's really important, Shane. I'm just conscious that Andrew's got to he's got to jump off in a minute, so I want to give him a word or three. Andrew, just some reflections from you before you shoot off. And if you had one question you wanted to ask a group of candidates for a future council, what would it be?
Wow. Okay. Just firstly, a couple of things. One of them is I'm a massive believer as a school teacher that happy, healthy kids learn better. And so we know the positives with extracurricular activities and physical activity, and the benefits to, you know, our mental health, but also our academic growth. So that needs to go hand in hand, and we don't want to see a drop off of kids. In fact, we want kids doing more activity. And, you know, Brad talks about his 19-year-old daughter. We want to see her continue to be involved in team sports and in activity, you know, all throughout her adult life. So that's number one. And I know, Sue, you talked about, you know, Monterey and Frankston North area. There's a lot of investment happening at the moment in Frankston North. I know Monterey Secondary College, they're going to have a centre of excellence, and there's some really fantastic things happening there. And if we can tie all of that in together, the participation rates and enrolments in schools in that area are just going to go through the roof if we can get it right. And I think the impact that Frankston Council can have on that is just, it's going to be massive. It's going to be huge. Not one particular question, Stephen, other than thank you so much for inviting me on this, guys.
No worries, thank you.
Wish I had a bit more time. I've got to do another little Zoom now, but thanks so much, and go Stone Cats.
Oh, go Ravers. Go Ravers.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and,
Thanks, Andrew.
And best of luck, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
So I'd like to see you've stolen my thunder with the Pines facilities there. I had a note from earlier on, and I went, "Oh no, she jumped in first."
You can go with it too, Justin. Add to it, because I just skimmed the.
I think you've knocked the nail on the head, Sue, in terms of the facilities. You know, when we're talking about sort of, you know, inclusion and shared spaces and all that sort of things, we need to be really mindful about, you know, particularly, and I'm going to sound old-fashioned, and I don't want to sound this way, but just hear me out for a second, extending the sport to women and encouraging women, young women and older women, to participate in sports that were traditionally, you know, sort of men-dominated sports. Big supporter. I've only watched a couple of each of the games, and it's, well, as I said, I'm a very big supporter of it. So look, the Pines facilities is an absolute big thing. But what I'm taking away from Brad number one and Andrew is we need to work as a council to have better shared facilities, and I think that's sort of what we're touching on now. In terms of what council can do with the various clubs, is we can have a better consultation and participation. And this seems to be a constant thing that I feel I'm saying on these videos with the consultation and participation, but it's obviously something that as a city that we're lacking. And in terms of the use of the facilities and I guess perhaps buy-in, we need to have a little bit more emphasis, and this is touching on something you said, Brad, which was around shared equity.
Yeah.
So if we've got all these systems in place that are supporting, you know, women, that are supporting mental well-being, which is, you know, about building the community overall, or community spirit and a sense of inclusion, because any sport I've ever played was always more so around the inclusion and the community side of it. Not so much anymore. I like to call myself a body shaper. I'm told round's a shape, but but I think, you know, all sort of jokes aside, the facilitation, the consultation, the participation, and making sure that we have a shared equity, a shared investment. And I don't just mean the club, I don't mean just the facility itself, the club rooms itself, but a shared investment back into our community clubs to make sure that we can have something that we can be proud of, something that the clubs can be proud of, and something as a community we can all share and be proud of it combined.
Yeah, it's a great point, Justin, because I think often we think very transactionally around how councils and local clubs can interact, and the only time we really need the council is when we need to lobby for a new set of bathrooms or a new upgrade to our lights, and conversely, the council probably only really come into it and say, well, you haven't paid your fees, or we need access to this so that we can redo the turf or redo the courts or whatnot. But I think what we're seeing as part of our club is that ability to bring groups of people together to share a message and to raise awareness around mental health and wellbeing, or suicide prevention, or raise money for charity, and things like the bushfire appeals. We were just about to host a local charity match. using one of the other Super Rules clubs as a centerpiece, but basically try to get the CFA and the local community together to rattle the tins and use football and Skybus Stadium as a vehicle to do that. And I think we should be able to look at the council to be able to say, okay, well, what can the clubs give the council, and what can the council give the clubs that invest back into the community, and how can we look at things differently rather than the council needs to give more money to development, and the clubs just need to look after the facilities a bit better, because I think the messaging around participation and health and and the promotion, I mean, we're really lucky. We're a very successful area, whether it's basketball, football, netball, cricket. There's not a sport that doesn't exist that hasn't had someone from Frankston come out of it and excel. I think the opportunity for us to be very proud of the stadiums and the courts and the grounds that we have access to just needs to continue to grow, rather than it just feel like a bit of a necessary evil that we always have to fight with council.
Yeah. And we have high schools here that produce Olympians and Paralympians, and we don't seem to celebrate that particularly either, do we?
Can I make just a comment about fighting with council, or I was a councillor from 2008 to 2012. Every year we decided on a budget. Every year we decided on what we would spend our money on, the people's money on at the rates. Problem number one is that you've got this many asks and you've got this much money. And look, as a councillor, what I would have loved is just to say yes to everybody. Everyone can have all their projects. Everyone can have all their upgrades. And I pay rates like anybody else, and it's a lot of money. I agree with you, but at the end of the day, the wish list is larger than the money available. And what is attractive to the council when it comes to choosing what to spend on this year as opposed to next year are the projects with the greatest outcomes, right? So if you have a project that caters to men and women, or girls and boys, that's a tick. If you're football and netball, for example, that's a tick. If you're in a disadvantaged area, that's a tick, right? So the hardest part of the job is when you're representing your community as a councillor, and there are people who miss out. But ultimately, what the council has to try to do is to get the most return for the ratepayers' money. And those are the projects that inevitably happen this year instead of next year.
Can I chip in with an observation? I really like Brad, what you were saying about that. It's very easy for everybody to have their job in relation to the clubs look after the facilities, the council collect the rent, or dictate who needs to do what. I would love it as a group of councillors or on council to rise above all of that, and in addition to it, have some really great brainstorming about, as a whole community, what other ideas are there? How else can we operate? Who else might like to get involved with these sports clubs in a different way? Or, people, I don't know, I'm throwing things out here worldly now, but all of our aged population, how could we involve them in some way? Do they want to tune into a game? Would they like to come down and see something? And what ideas do they have? I'm sure there are masses of good thoughts and ways of combining, like you're saying, the CFA fundraising for bushfire relief, but doing it through a sporting club. That, as a community, we've got lots of different facets to how we operate. So I think it's time to really look at how we can combine different views and aspects of the way we run, to cross-fertilize some ideas and some energy to get, the sum of the parts being a lot greater. Anyway, just a thought on that, because I agree, the sort of transactional stuff, you get bogged down in that tick list of jobs to do, and you don't see opportunities to be differently and operate differently.
It does strike me that, you know, council, as well as kind of having that functional role of supporting clubs through physical infrastructure, sporting grounds, etc. And I'll come to you in a second, Peter. It's also got a power to convene people together. And actually that kind of speaks to that question that Shane raised around participation. It speaks to that question that Tiger Sharks Brad spoke to around well-being and actually, you know, a healthy community is going to be a more resilient community. A healthy community is going to participate more. And then the other piece that we haven't actually touched on yet is, you know, the role of the private sector in Frankston within all of that as well, because there are a lot of small and medium-sized companies that operate in Frankston, or the owners of them live in Frankston, who contribute to a lot of these clubs as well. And maybe there's something about bringing all those different stakeholders together in a different way to look at how we can support healthy lifestyles. And I'm thinking back to the old Life Be In It ads growing up, and Norm getting him off the couch. But you know, how we can, as a council, actually bring people together in a way that makes us think differently around the importance of sport and active lifestyles, particularly given the fabulous lifestyle benefits we've got living here. Peter.
Well, that's exactly council's role. I mean, to me, it's not, yeah, I mean, it's good to enunciate it, absolutely, but that's exactly council's role. There's a few things I'd say about funding. One of the things I've sort of carried on about here and there is a concept of, and I take Brad's points, there's a budget, and it's not as if you can go into deficit. It's not like that. You have to balance the budget, etc. But there are reserves there, and there's a concept of economics as if people matter. Now, coming out of COVID, what do we need? What's values being talked about? Value, goodness me, community value in sport is huge, and it's even bigger. It's even bigger, coming out of this. It's absolutely what we need. We need to invest in things that are going to actually raise the psychological health of the community, and I absolutely believe in that. And so when we're looking at funding, sporting associations, sporting groups, clubs are really big on the value, and that's a sort of an overlay. There's the normal value things that Brad number 2 talked about. That's for sure. You go through that process, but the overlay is there's bigger value in certain things. There's also, what is the budget? The budget is a certain amount. Do you balance it on a yearly thing? Do you actually dip into reserves a little bit? Well, I don't know what the reserve of the council is. I know the amount they've got in the bank. We've talked about it before. There'll be a reserve, but I would have thought, just like, well, no, not quite like the federal budget where they go into deficit, but they do spend more to try and get recovery going. And mental health is such a huge thing. We're going to have to spend more, and we're going to have to spend more on things that work. And I think the track record of sport is that it does work. To Sue, what Sue was saying about almost having a sort of a huge community consultation, and tell me if I'm not reading you right, you can butt in. And you will have a huge conglomerate of views, and you'll have conflict in those views, and you'll have to really work it. And I'm sure Sue would have realised that when she said it. You have to really work it and manage it well. So you actually need councillors there who might be able to do that. I won't say too much more about that, but I think you know what I'm saying. If councillors can act as a united team themselves and then go out and connect with the community.
Oh, did you hit your mute button, Peter?
I've just muted. I did that the other day. I'm developing a technique with that.
Wind it up.
But I'll finish off by saying, Dolphins, great club. And, we've got to get down there. We've got to invigorate these clubs, not just the Dolphins, all the others. I don't want to see people get left out. I mean, my daughter played softball, and I was very proud to teach her how to actually hit the ball. I played some baseball in the past, so I actually knew about it. It's a very difficult thing, even in softball. So, you know, and there was a little club up the road near where we lived, go down there every Saturday. It was fantastic. And the kids would get there, and the community spirit was marvellous with the tuck shop and all of the hot dogs and all of that. We've got to get back to it for sure.
Before you jump in there, Justin, I'm just conscious that Brad number one, who's not on the ballot, I might just add so in case people get confused about which Brad. I know he's got to shoot off for a committee meeting. But so, Brad, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to offer in your reflections on tonight's conversation, but also to give you a heartfelt thanks for joining us tonight and sharing your own thoughts and experiences.
Thank you. And look, it's great to hear that everyone seems to be on the same page, that that everyone values the contribution that community sport and participation and involvement in something bigger than just yourself can be. And I think we've all experienced when we've felt a bit disconnected with our sport being taken away from us this season. So I look forward to getting back. And I suppose the challenge that I'd put to you that are running for council is to just think about how can you celebrate the fantastic amenities that we've now got at our disposal. When you think about what's been invested into not just Skybus Stadium, but into everything. When Lloyd Park's going to finish, Jubilee Park's going to finish. We've got Park sitting just opposite Frankston TAFE. And the fire station, you've got so many different things. The jewels in the crown are many. So I suppose my question to you is, how are you going to maximize the investments that have been made so that people get to share them rather than it just be the options for a few, whether that's Frankston Dolphins or Frankston Tiger Sharks. I think everyone should just have access to all the things so that people from 9 all the way through to 60 can share in it.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Brad. And good luck with your committee meeting, and look forward to our next conversation.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Brad.
Justin, I know you were next in the queue, and then we'll go to Shane, and then we'll move to wrap up as well.
Oh, look, mine's just a bit of a reflection. I think, Peter, you summed it up really nicely in terms of looking at what value is, not just the fiscal value, but the community value. I couldn't have said it better myself. But in terms of things that don't cost us, they do cost us, but don't cost us as much in terms of what our investment is. Look, there's definitely going to be a push post-COVID in terms of a local Frankston campaign. So isn't this an absolutely brilliant opportunity off the back of that to support our clubs in terms of being able to advertise them for membership, being able to advertise their events, and being able to advertise their games and whatnot. So then not only our community, but the broader community as a whole will have access to these teams. And hopefully, on the bigger scheme of things, is we might be able to attract other players. Obviously, look, I'm not 35 plus, so I don't fit into those other players ones. That's something that's resonated with me. not for another few weeks yet anyway. Actually, funnily enough, it's November 13, just saying. If anyone didn't realise, November 13 is actually when they're releasing the election results.
Happy birthday.
Are you talking about the council election? Are you talking about the council election or the US presidential election?
The council election. What one's the presidential election? What day is it?
It's third, on the third.
But no, I think there's a lot we can do. When we use the term investment as a sort of broad term, there is so much that we could do. If we're already going to be out there advertising the local Frankston and you know, sort of putting that Invest Into Us campaign as we move forward into the new council and sort of form what our city's going to be over the next 20 years, then that is an absolute opportunity off the back of that. That's all I have to say.
Great, thanks very much, Justin. Shane, I'll give you about 30 seconds, and then we'll quickly move around the room.
Yeah, so the main one, I totally agree with Justin, what he just said. That was exactly, stole my thunder. Thanks, mate. I shouldn't have put it in the chat. Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, thanks. No. So just to touch on the fact that, yeah, the council can be more proactive in terms of all the clubs across all different sports, all that kind of stuff. So that's something that we keep in mind going forward. The other one is that most of the sponsors businesses are not operating. So the thing is, we've got to deal with that. So it's not only the cricket clubs now, I know, that are dealing with it. The footy clubs will find that will be a big issue, and we haven't even felt this yet, because I know I'm looking at the sponsors and I'm like, not running. Where does that, how does that going to turn out? So that's something that we need to keep in mind, but certainly great conversation.
Yep.
I love it.
Great, thanks very much, Shane. And I think just on that note about the sponsors as well is just a reminder to people to kind of go local first, because we've got, if the more we support local businesses in Frankston City, the more they'll be able to return the favour back to our clubs and sports locally as well. I'm going to go around my screen. I'm going to come to you, Sue.
Okay, yeah, really great conversation this evening, just to remind us all how important sport is, whatever it is. Homing pigeons, barefoot bowls, roller derby, all the sorts of things that I would love to have a go at. Maybe not AFL, but then all the spectating and also the getting involved with, making the teas or running events, or there's so many ways you can get involved in a club that's about sport, that is really helpful to, will be helpful to rebuilding our community as we go through and beyond this. So I feel really excited about the prospect of adding value. And again, it's not, yes, money is important, but there are so many volunteers, so that the value that's added by people that contribute their time, their ideas, their energy, their participation, that probably outweighs the financial cost sometimes, if you actually put a dollar value to it. But that's really, really an important part of building going forward. So yeah, excited by this conversation. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So I should actually note that of all those sports you mentioned, you didn't mention water sports, which I know is a particular interest of Shane's as well.
Well, I did sail many years ago on a gravel pit, so I'm not used to the big wide westward. I'll have to go to Oliver Hill.
We'll go to speak to Oliver.
Sailing tips on that, yes.
Brad.
Look, I'll just say anything that gets kids into sport is terrific. You can get kids who are disconnected from the community, from life, from their friends, from their family. If you can get them to play a bit of sport, you can turn their life around, right? You can change lives. You can potentially keep them out of trouble, out of jail, what have you. All the advantages we've already spoken about. That's a huge one to me. What was also mentioned a minute ago was sponsors. Support the sponsors who support us. And when you shop at those sponsors, tell them, right? The reason why I'm here today is because you're sponsoring my local club, right? That's oxygen for those clubs, even if it's just a sign or if it's trophies on award night or whatever it is. Let those sponsors know.
Spot on. Spot on.
Peter.
Okay, this is like potluck because we don't know where we are on your screen, so you got to be ready. Interesting. A quick story which encapsulates a bit of what Brad was just saying there. So, and it talks about sailing too. So over in Western Australia, I was a sailing officer. I used to teach junior recruits how to sail on the Swan River. All good fun. Now, on Saturday, I'd take them out, sort of thing, that we'd go out. The executive officers' kids would come down, young kids. Some of them were, well, they're pretty naughty kids, quite frankly, a couple of them, releasing handbrakes on cars and things like that. And mummy and daddy weren't real happy. And they said, please take them sailing. So I did, honestly, and the elder sister came too and sort of helped me with them and the junior recruits. But those kids, in one sailing season, those two little children, they transformed into great kids. They were so responsible. The other quick one about that is when I arrived over there, the Air Force had won the sailing competition with the Navy and the Army every year for about 7 years. I thought this is ridiculous. So one of the reasons why is because the equipment was shocking. It was shocking, and it was rubbish. So I just spent a lot of money and bought new stuff, Department of Defence sort of thing. The sailors came out of everywhere. They're really good service. So the lesson is, if you refurbish things, provide something, you get your membership increasing. People will come in, flock in to actually participate. So yeah, it's worth investing in.
So
Right, thanks very much, Peter.
Is the moral to the story, Peter, that if you get into trouble, Peter's going to take you sailing? Because I've seen a couple of movies like that involve cement and something to do with a boat, but I'm not really sure.
It depends who you are. Selection process there.
Vote for Peter or you get concrete boots. Is that where we're going?
Shouldn't be the fishes.
As well. I mean, might help. I don't know.
We don't want to stir things up in the Westport
That'd
too
be
much
very
there.
careful.
Yeah, and I do have to extend an apology to Oliver Hill, because I did say we'd try and talk about Oliver's proposed activation plan for the Dolphins, for the Frankston Park with the lights and so on. But we might actually come back to that one, because we've still got a couple of sessions to go before the election's closed out. So we will come back to that, I do promise. I'd also like to just acknowledge the fantastic comments that we've had as we've gone on. I think Michael Craighead commenting there about how do we maximise the investment across all facilities and tie them in as one. I think that's really important. It's about how we have a strategic approach to community sport and community facilities as well. Diane Hall's picked up on the inclusion support grants that are also available. I also know that some clubs, so I know that the basketball club that I'm involved in, we have made an offer to parents that have been badly affected by COVID-19 to be able to essentially get a subsidy on their fees if needed, because the last thing we want to do, and this comes back to your point, Shane, about participation, the last thing we want to do is lose kids because they haven't played organised sport for 6 months.
Right.
And it's just so critically important. I think there's been a few comments about whether there should be exporting club presidents running council. Well, I think there's a few of us on here already, so job done. No politician dumping in the West Ward, please.
Yeah, I was just about to point that one out. Thanks, Oliver, because Steve's talking about a really, really important point there with coronavirus, and you've made me laugh as he said it. So I don't want people to think that's what I'm laughing at. I was actually laughing at the no politicians.
Oh, that's awkward, because I was laughing at that. I was laughing at that. That's awkward now.
There was a conversation that we had, it was either last week or the week before, where we were talking about the environment with David Cross, and Oliver did offer to take all the cats. So, I'm a little bit concerned about where Oliver's thought processes are going. But look, just wanted to say thank you to everyone that has watched. I'd like to say thank you to our guests that have left us, both Andrew and Brad, for being so generous with their time. And I'd like to thank Shane, Sue, Brad, Justin and Peter for their time. I'm a big fan of community sport. I've got back into it because of my kids. Sport was really the thing that kept me at school. I wasn't an AFL player. It was rugby union for me, which taught me an awful lot about life and about teamwork and about leadership.
What position Stephen?
I was a hooker. I was in the front row.
Oh,
yeah.
Risky
so
business.
Watch out. Yeah. I think we have some really fantastic sporting clubs across all different kinds of sports and codes and so on in Frankston. And I'd love it if we weren't just the lifestyle capital of Victoria, but the sporting capital of Victoria as well. Thank you very much, Frankston. Good luck. Don't forget to vote. And there's 6 people on this screen who are definitely worth voting for. Of course, vote 1 McDonald if you're in the South Ward. Tell Brad. We look forward to talking to you again on Friday. I will post the topic online once we've finished that. But have a fantastic evening, and we look forward to you all having a wonderful week.